Dick, Susan Franklin, and Ralph Dormitzer from Capital Budget. So we have a quorum. And the first item on the agenda is the Water Department requests. They'd like to transfer $100,000 from retained earnings to this Beechwood water main project. They already received our approval to move the majority of that money back at ATM, but I guess the final cost came in $100,000 higher. And last week, the only thing that we didn't have in order to vote this was the retained earnings number. Since then, our new town finance director has affirmed that the retained earnings number stands at exactly $2 million today. So they've got plenty of funds in retained earnings to do this transfer. And I'll just stop there and see if anyone else has any other questions, or if we just want to move to vote.
I'm fine to vote if Ralph is.
Yes, I am. Yep.
Oh, good.
Yep.
Okay.
And I move that capital budget recommend $100,000. You know what? I should put in the warrant article number. Hang on for a second while I bring that up. So this is Article 5. Article 5, Item 7. $100,000 for to be moved from water stabilization to, I'm not sure what fund it goes into. Michelle, maybe you can tell us what fund that goes to.
I think you want to remove it from water retained earnings and put it into their capital stabilization or stabilization fund.
Okay, so I will move that capital budget recommend moving $100,000 from the water stabilization fund from water department retained earnings into the water stabilization fund for Beechwood water main upgrades.
Do you have a second?
Michelle, did you say stabilization fund?
Yep.
Okay. Second.
All right, roll call vote. All in favor, Michael Dick?
Aye.
Susan Franklin?
Aye.
Ralph Dormitzer?
Aye.
Brian Host? Aye. Okay. Next item of business is the Osgood vestibule. Michelle, I guess I'll turn it over to you for a quick update on this.
Sure. So what we did is we sent out some specifications to 3 architects, engineer, designers to come take a look at the Osgood vestibule to give us a price on engineering construction documents through bidding. We sent it out to Teriyaki, we sent it out to Susan Hoadley, and we sent it out to AI3. As of right now, the only proposal we have back is from AI3. I do anticipate one coming back from Susan Hoadley. However, AI3's I uploaded to the OneDrive for everyone to see, and it came in at about 40, if I'm not mistaken, I don't have it in front of me, for about $48,000.
48.5.
Yeah.
I'm reading it.
So I just want to add, and the reason we're coming before you now for this funding is because they want to start construction as soon as possible. And in order to get bids in hand, they would have to bid it this spring, similar to many projects, come with bids in hand for annual town meetings, so we have an exact price. So the work can be done over the summer.
Okay, so that's the real driver of timing. So it's a security issue, and they want to be able to do the implementation in the summer. So we backwards engineer into this as an approval date as opposed to ATM.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Do we? I know the original request came in as an appropriation, seeking an appropriation for the whole project, and my recollection was the range was 180 to 220. And that was for the entire project. we're now looking at 50 just for the design work. Do we have sort of any guidance as to what we really think the total project's going to cost?
I think the total project, including these design fees, is going to come in at $250.
Okay. Okay, and the thinking at this point by AI3 is to sort of keep the vestibule, outside of the lobby. Is that the latest thinking?
Yes. Yes. And we thought, because we're not engineers, that it would just be easy, open up some brick, put a window in there, close off the side. And we all sat there and thought about it. And then, of course, the architects and engineers came in and said, yeah, that sounds great in theory, but you can't because of this and this security reason and this. And so there's a lot more to it. And I actually would recommend that once they start designing, it maybe capital budget has an on-site meeting there to understand exactly what they're trying to do. Because I feel like every time we do a large project like this and you're involved, we can answer all those questions up front. And sometimes
Right.
it changes the scope of the project.
I think that makes sense. This is a somewhat complicated project, and it'd just be good at least to understand exactly what's involved.
Right.
Okay, so the number right now in the warrant is 20. We're going to be changing that to 50. Is that?
Yes.
That's the long and the short of it? Okay.
Yes.
And the thinking is, per Nick's, is thinking still consistent with Nick's suggestion that, by putting the new vestibule sort of outside of the lobby where it is today, but going wall to wall, he's going to replace the front. We're going to get a double dip and replace the front doors at the same time.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Which would have been a decent chunk of change, even if it was just a door replacement. Okay. Anyone else? Questions, thoughts, concerns?
Well, I think the other important point that was brought up is that this is one of the buildings that we actually feel comfortable with, that it has, a long life ahead of it and is not destined to be replaced.
I'm still surprised at how high the number is for the design. And now hearing Michelle saying 200,000 to put on a vestibule. I don't know how to question it. I really don't. I don't have the anywhere near the expertise to understand all that goes into it. But it just seems like a big number for creating a vestibule. And I don't know what else we can do. Are we pretty much locked into this? And, our job is to say, well, okay, I guess it sounds okay. But I just don't feel like we're really doing our job. Ralph, what do you think? Does this seem like a reasonable number? Or?
I have a number of thoughts here on this one. First, I guess a question first. To what degree do we have a security problem at Osgood School? And what is the nature of that security problem? And is it reasonable to assume we absolutely have to do this now because the security problem is so great? I guess that's a question for you, Michelle.
Yep. So I can answer that. I want to caution, calling out this is such a security issue because I don't want anyone to feel as though their children are not safe in the schools. But the security challenge that's posed is when the secretaries buzz people in through the doors, they don't know who they're buzzing in. There is no line of sight to anybody. They simply hit the bell and you're allowed in. And yes, you're supposed to check into the office. However, do you, don't you? This way they would have a window where you check in similar to the other schools. And you never want to say it's not going to happen in my town, but you just want to make sure that anything that we're doing, any enhancement we're doing, you know, offers the safest option. And with that being said, and I'm going to go back to Susan's point, when we did the building facilities assessments, the Osgood scored so highly and being maintained so well that this investment, I think, will go a long way for a long time.
Okay.
So let me.
A couple of other thoughts. I would tend to agree with Mike that 50,000, and I looked at the entire proposal, which seems nicely loaded up with all kinds of stuff. We probably have seven other consultants we actually employ in this thing. Everything from electrical engineers, high-vac engineers, mechanical engineers, you name it, they've loaded it with absolutely every possible person you can imagine. So my instinct is to say I would never put up $50,000 to an architect without another vote, without another quote. Absolutely never do that. AI3 has got kind of an inside track with an awful lot of towns, as I've noticed, and they are able to do that. I don't think we should live with that. I think we should have at least one other quote, maybe two. I really think it's necessary to see what the real cost ought to be on this thing, and I would not start with the $50,000 because it presupposes to anybody who reads that in fact that's what's available. I don't think that's a good idea. Then finally, like so many other things I'm looking at, and I don't want to overstate it, but by bringing many of these items before us, before the actual regular town meeting, these subtract from whatever money we're going to get with regard to our total spending availability coming regular town meeting. And so I'm always wary of actually, allowing things through at the special town meeting, in spite of the fact that I know it authorizes, in other words, it enables the regular town meeting, but it essentially presupposes we're going to actually approve. That's what happens. And we're presupposing we're going to approve something of substantial cost, which eliminates other things we might find of value worth doing. So my inclination is, if you had a second quote or a third quote, I might say yes, but I'm puzzled at the 50,000. Normally a $50,000 architect's fee results in a $500,000 project. It doesn't result in 200,000. They don't work at 5%, they work at 10%. So I don't really know what to make of it, to be honest with you. So my inclination is this is not the right time to vote this one. So that's, I hate to say it, so.
Yeah, no, so Ralph, with that being said, and I can appreciate that, I think what we can do is press Susan on getting her quote. And then I saw that you asked for a meeting Monday night, and perhaps by then we'll have her quote, and then we can have more discussion and dialogue regarding it. And maybe at that time, we could even ask them to come to Capitol and present.
Okay.
The other suggestion I would make here, Michelle, is for you to go back to the School Facilities Committee.
Yep.
And just tell them, capital budget is balking at the number. And what can we do to get this number down? And enlist them to go back to A13 and to Susan Hoadley and say, we've got to get this, we need to get this much lower. We need to get this half of what we're thinking right now is what capital budget is. And I'm speaking for myself, but I'm using the term capital budget. But if we all agree with what I'm saying anyway, this is probably twice of what I was expecting for the scope of this particular change, this vestibule.
Yeah, and if that's the direction of the board, I'm happy to do that.
So, couple thoughts. I share the concern about the number, but I also acknowledge at least my own tendency to oversimplify the work that's involved. I mean, I think of this largely as a glass box that sits outside the school, right? And I guess I struggle to understand why it would involve, plumbing, HVAC, and all these other things, when it really should be sort of fundamentally a glass pop-out box sitting in front of the, that front school wall and spanning, from left to right in that nook. It feels as though it's been overcomplicated, but maybe it's just dramatically more complicated than my instincts suggest. I definitely agree with Ralph. I think we need a second quote. In terms of the security, and then, once I think we have that second quote and maybe you have a chance to talk to either or both of these firms to really understand what's involved. Then we have to make a decision on it. In terms of the, and we're pretty much out of time, so this has to happen quickly. In terms of the security need, I guess anyone who's curious, I would encourage you to just literally call the principal up there and ask to drop in and have them, take literally 5 minutes on site to understand the issue. I don't want to go into too much detail, in a public meeting, but I guess what I would tell you is that the other schools are all uniform in the sense that you walk through a first set of doors into a vestibule and you're stopped by a second set of doors that are locked. Okay. And inside that vestibule, there is a window, a secure glass window, that you step up to where, and the people on the other side of it can see you and can see every inch of the vestibule. They can see if there's another person with you. They can see if you're holding something below the window. They can just totally see you and everything that you're carrying. And that does not exist here. There is there's a camera system, and they can look through the camera monitor and see you, but it's not, there are blind spots. Let me just put it that way. And you'd have to redo the camera system entirely in order to make that go away. The other thing is that, there's a lobby guard where you have to put in your ID and it checks your ID and I don't know what it checks, but it fundamentally checks your ID and clears you as a non-security threat. Sometimes the IDs don't go through. If you're standing at a security window, you can slide your ID through. They can look at it, make sure it's you, figure out what to do. At that location, there's no window to slide your ID through. They fundamentally have to come out of the office, walk around, and open a door to get an ID from you, which is not a good way to get an ID and figure out whether or not the person belongs to be there. It is supposed to be there. So it is suboptimal. I think functionally it's suboptimal from a security perspective. And if my description didn't allow you to visualize and understand the issues, you should really seriously just take 5 minutes and stop in and look at it. I think you'll understand it. It's kind of a long-winded way of saying I've just based on my visit, I was convinced that there is a need to do this. But I would encourage you to make your own decisions.
I don't think we question the need, Brian. We're questioning the cost.
Yeah.
And a question, Michelle, what did it cost us to get the middle high school vestibule set up?
That's a great question, Mike, and I don't have an answer for you, but I can certainly
I can somewhat answer it because I asked the exact same question. I don't remember the exact number, Michael, but it was a lot less money. It was somewhere around 50 grand, or maybe it was 40 grand. The difference there is that that project, literally, there was already a vestibule where you came into the building and there were two sets of doors and then there was a hallway. And literally what they did is they simply added a new set of doors in the hallway and cut a hole through the wall and put in the window.
Right.
So it was a dramatically simpler project that frankly didn't require design work. I mean, they just simply added another set of security doors and cored a hole through the wall and added a window. So.
And the original ask, Michelle, how much was that? Before we said, well, wait a minute, let's get a design.
$200,000. It was between 180 and 220, and I think we just chose the 200.
Mhm.
So it sounds like people want to see a second bid, want to see if there's a way to get the price down, or want to see if there's a way for us to understand the complexity that would justify the $50,000 number. Pretty much where
Well, the $250,000 number.
Yeah.
A simpler design and a simpler construction.
I mean, conceptually, Michael, I think the idea of a simpler design and simpler construction, it sounds great, but I think until you go up there and look at it, I mean, it's 3 walls and a roof, right? Well, actually, it's at least 1 wall and a roof if you went completely side to side. But right now, the vestibule is 3 walls and a roof and a floor and a set of doors. And you're talking about, you know, extending the roof on both sides. So you're really replacing the entire vestibule in order to do this. I'm not suggesting that, I'm not justifying the number. I mean, it's not a trivial project. But I do question whether or not this heating and plumbing and all this other stuff. I mean, it's a vestibule. I'm not sure we need it to be heated or air conditioned. People shouldn't spend more than a minute in there. Okay, so what do we want to do? Just at least get the quote from Hoadley and maybe have a conversation with these 2 firms? What would people like to do? What do you feel like you need in order to either get to yes or no on this?
We almost need a visit there with whomever is chosen as the low bidder. I think that's what you do. It's really not exactly our responsibility to do that, but you might actually ask the school building committee to do that, a school facilities committee to do that. But I do think it does not feel as though one should spend $50,000 on engineering for this. And it is just an 8 by 26 foot room. It's not very big. It's quite small. Even at $200,000, you're talking about more than $1,000 a square foot on this thing. Maybe it's $1,200 a square foot. It's a huge amount of money for that. Hard to believe one needs to spend that kind of dough for it. But anyway, just do it on a square foot basis and add a little bit more for the complexity. But anyway.
I'm just, look, I'm not debating it. It feels high. I'm just trying to figure out how we get to yes. I mean, the school committee's, from their perspective, they have a bid and they're ready to do it. And this is the price. So I'm not really sure what we're sending back to the school committee.
It seems very expensive. Simply that.
We're questioning the price. We're questioning the school facilities committee's process and analysis.
Right. I mean, their process is to put it out to bid. These are the bids.
And have they reviewed the bids? Have they questioned, as we are questioning here, the approach? It just doesn't, I don't get any sense at all that anyone said, make it, I don't get it. Any sense at all that anyone pushed back and said, we need to spend less on this. What can we do? It's like, okay, 250, let's go. Rather than, well, we don't have 250.
So I just want to add, I think we got to this design study number because the original price we brought before seemed excessive, and I believe that they said, well, let's go out for a design and see if there's anything we can do to bring the cost down. So we don't know what the final cost would be, but knowing that the design cost is $50,000, like Ralph said, it's a percentage of the project, which is, it might lend to something more than what we thought from the beginning.
And we still have the original request for 180 to 220.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? Maybe it'll come in at 150. I don't know, and I don't want to speculate.
Okay. I just expect the consultants to lower their number, rather than just our accepting $50,000 to design a room.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about this from a procurement perspective. Michelle, is that even? I mean, is that even how it is able to work? I mean, I'm not.
Yeah. I mean, I can go back to both and say, you know, we had a meeting and your prices are too high. So if you want this project, we can either go back to them and say, we're willing to spend up to 30,000, or tell us what you can do better. And they'll both come back to us and tell us. And they may say, we can't do any better, or they may say, well, if we take this into consideration, and they can lower their price, but we do have that ability.
Okay, and we don't know what the second number is yet, or do we?
We do not.
Okay. So the second number may come in at 25.
Right, exactly. And then it's almost a
It's conversation for nothing at that point.
Right, a non-issue.
Okay. It sounds like we really need to get the second bid. Do we think that the third person that was invited to bid is just not going to? We think Terry.
Yeah, I don't think they're interested.
Okay. But your sense is that Hoadley Martinez is?
I think, yes, very interested.
Okay.
Just a quick question, if you don't mind, Michelle. Why is it an architect doing this? This is kind of an engineering job. There's not much architecture involved here. Is it possible there are some engineering firms, or maybe you have already contacted engineering firms on this?
Yeah, so we reached out to about 4 or 5 firms. The only 2 that were interested were AI3 and Hoadley Martinez.
Okay. No engineering firm?
No, actually the engineering firm sent us and said, you should actually be talking to an architect. And I don't know if that's because it's a school building. Perhaps that may be different, but I mean, I'm happy to reach out as soon as we're off this call tonight, start sending out some emails and saying, you know, this is the feeling of the committee, and we just need to do better. So what can we do? And I need your final number by Monday at noon.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
great. I also wonder if, you know, if we were to set expectations as to what we want in that vestibule, that might, you know, constrain the price a bit more. I mean, you know, maybe I'm just being naive in terms of what needs to go into a vestibule. And I certainly have walked into vestibules where you walk out of the cold and, you know, between the first and the second set of doors, you're blasted by a hot air furnace and it feels yummy, right? But I'm not sure we need that. I'm not sure we need literally anything more than a wall of glass, a roof on it. You know, a wall of glass that goes from, you know, from the wall on the left to the wall on the wing on the left to the wing on the right, you know, a roof over it, and, you know, secure window cored through a brick wall, which should be fairly straightforward. I mean, the building's not going to fall down if we, you know, core a window through a brick wall. I just struggle to understand why we need, you know, all this other stuff. It seems odd.
Well, the question really probably is, what is the description that went out to the potential bidders? How simple was it, or how complex was the description? Right. Yeah.
I can answer that. It was a very simple description, similar to what Brian has just outlined. Okay. We don't want anything extravagant.
Okay.
So did they give you any color as to why we need all these, you know, other experts?
They did not. And I can certainly ask them that.
I know if it was just glass with a, you know, a non-combustible ceiling, I'm not even sure you need fire suppression in there. But I mean, I don't know. I just feel like.
So we just went through this on, it was residential plans, but we got a number that was ridiculous. And instead we went back and said what we were willing to live with and what could you do inside that number. And you'd be surprised when you pull the rug out from under them, they suddenly they suddenly back down on their numbers. There's a lot of fluff in these proposals.
And that's what it feels like, Michelle.
Yeah, okay, so we'll go back, I'll go back to them,
Okay.
and then we'll be prepared to talk about it Monday.
Okay. And yeah, we definitely, yeah. I mean, we're out of time, so we need to get to the bottom of the quotes. We need to get to the bottom of being able to simplify this. And anyone that wants to go see it should go up.
Yeah, so who do we contact? You said just call for the principal?
I literally just, called in and said I was from the capital budget committee, and I was going to drop by, and I just wanted to look at the vestibule. This is the vestibule vis-a-vis this, the security upgrade request.
Okay, I'll do that tomorrow.
I mean, they let me in, the principal walked out, we spent 5 minutes, and I was on my way. It's not, it's not a complicated look-see.
Yeah, great. I'll do it.
And I think it'll give you an understanding of the construction issue. I mean, what you're going to see is that the current vestibule, it's set in an alcove fundamentally. I mean, there's a wing of the building on your left, a wing of the building protrudes on your left and right. You walk in between those two protrusions, and then you've got this vestibule that sticks out off the wall, but it doesn't go from side to side. And that's fundamentally what it needs to do. It needs to go literally from the left wall to the right wall and have a roof over it, core through the wall on the left-hand side, and you're set. But I'm trivializing it. The pads there, the foundation should be there. I can't imagine we need all these utilities in that room. It's just a vestibule. But
yeah, and my frame of reference is the middle high school.
It's a different animal.
And that, well, to me, it's the same animal. It does the function, the form.
Same function. Same function. Unfortunately, different configuration. Wish we had just a hallway walking in here, but that's not the case. Okay, so that's where we are. We're going to wait for the second bid, and hopefully you can have conversations with BI3, Michelle, and Woodley, and see if we can get these numbers down to a more palatable level.
Sure.
Thank you, Michelle. Also, if you could find out how much we did spend to
Michael, take your time. Just for everyone's benefit, Michael's recovering from COVID, so let's just not push it.
All right, just what did it cost us to install at middle high school?
Sure.
All right, next up is the Beechwood Playground request.
Okay, so this request, where do I start? So we had a playground inspector come around to all the town playgrounds, including the two schools. And they gave a report on Deer Hill, Osgood, Library, and Beechwood. In conjunction with this, there's a community group from the Beechwood area that's also working on trying to get a new playground in the Beechwood area. So we had the inspector go out. The inspector actually flagged Beechwood and said it was in need of repair, significant repair. There are some repairs that are needed to the library, and some to Deer Hill. Once again, Osgood's fine. But the Beechwood playground, what we've learned is that it was installed in 1998. And some of the equipment was actually purchased from Weirgard Corporation when they went out of business for their daycare center. And we purchased it used from them. And then we installed it at Beechwood in 1998. Some of the things that are in need of immediate repair are bolts, some rust, making it unsafe on some structures to be playable unless that's repaired. To repair those structures, it's $30,000. So we pivoted and said, how much is it going to cost for the entire playground? We got a cost for the entire playground. once again from a couple of vendors. The entire playground is coming in probably around $230,000, and that's to rebuild the entire playground. Some of the benefits of rebuilding the playground are getting it to be ADA compliant for the life of the playground, which is typically 30 to 35 years. Currently, we use wood chips in our playgrounds, and what we've learned is that if you don't have 10 inches of wood chips at all times underneath the play structure, it is no longer ADA compliant. So what we're recommending is the rubberized structure below all of the play equipment, and that would be for the entire park. And the payback on that is about 7 years. It does add substantial cost, but it does keep the playground ADA compliant for the life of the playground. We've gone to CPC and had conversations. We didn't fill out a formal ask regarding this playground, asking them to fund the playground. And the community group that supports this was also present. They would like for us to go back to recreation and other groups to find out if there's any other funding available elsewhere that could match funding for them. So that's where we stand right now with the playground.
Okay, so just so I understand this at least, the request to us, the total project is 200,000 plus.
233.
Okay, but the request to capital budget is 50. Is that my understanding?
Yes.
And is the anticipation that CPC is going to pick up, the other $180,000 of the project?
We are hoping that that is the case. We're hoping that CPC picks up the remainder of the project. And if they don't pick up all of it, we're hoping recreation has some sort of match to make sure we can rebuild this playground.
And when you say recreation, isn't that you're saying the recreation operating budget?
The revolving fund, if there's any money that's available to throw in for this playground, because they did have a maintenance budget for playgrounds at one time.
Okay.
It's within their purview. So we were going to ask if they have any funding available that they can throw at this playground.
Michelle, would this be located exactly where the other one is now?
Yes, it would be.
So right behind the basketball courts?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, adjacent to it, adjacent to the basketball courts.
And Michelle, I remember a few years ago, we and several other towns came under immense scrutiny for the fact that our playgrounds, or at least some of them at the time, were not ADA compliant. And my recollection was we upgraded some, but not others. And sadly, we spent a lot of money upgrading, one of them at Deer Hill, which, if I recall correctly, had just been put in a couple of years earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so, I'm going to ask the question about this that, probably should have been asked about the Deer Hill project before they put in the, put in the new playground, only to find out it wasn't compliant 2 or 3 years later. Has anyone looked at this proposal to confirm that this money will ensure that we do not come under fire from regulators for ADA compliance on this site
Yes.
in the near future?
Yes, so I can answer that. And the answer is yes. So we've been working with 2 different vendors on this project. Both are state vendors. Both are very much aware of Massachusetts ADA compliance. They are actually the ones that suggested the rubberized install.
Right.
They did give us the option though, if we wanted to stay with wood chips, they think we're probably 3 years away from any real regulations tightening that we can't
Right.
use wood chips. But if you're putting something that lasts 35 years, 3 years doesn't seem that long to wait. And if you're doing it, you might as well do it right and put the rubberized structure in before install.
Okay, so the rubberized surface will be ADA compliant. Does the equipment meet the ADA requirement as well?
Yeah.
I sort of just simple, you know.
Oh, that's a great question, Brian. And it's come up several times. And so something you'll see in this playground that we don't have in many of our other playgrounds is there's going to be equipment here that will be accessible by all. So there'll be a piece of equipment actually stationed here that, you know, if people are in a wheelchair and they want to play with their friends, they can still have that same experience on the same piece of equipment playing with their friends. There's also going to be pieces throughout the playground that can be accessed by sitting, and there'll be some musical instruments. There'll be tic-tac-toe boards, structures like that that are fun for everybody.
Okay.
So Michelle, the 233 assumes that our DPW does $26,000 of work.
Yes. So they would remove the existing equipment, and we would have the site actually graded. And one of the companies that we're working with said they'd be on site to make sure it was graded to the correct specification, and allowing us to bear the expense with our own staff.
So that's actually one of the things that I'm a little worried about is we have a baseball field on one side of this and new basketball courts, which we replaced due to some water problems in the past. And this in between the two of them. So water runoff, and I think it's pretty complicated.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And I can just say, so we have a construction and labor contract with the town. We have the same contractors that do this for all of our projects, and they work on several playground sites already. So I think we're positioned well to use them.
Okay, and I'm just looking at the number workup that, or the quote workup that Susan referred to, and I see kind of under the boxes, you know, there's a savings of, you know, $13,000 and another savings of $13,600. And then on the next line, it says this would give you a total savings of $46,600. So I seem to be missing another 20. So 13 plus 13,600 is 26,600, not 46,600. So let me just do this for a second. 80, 200, 280. Yeah, when I add up the three lines up above and drop out 26,600, I end up in, you know, I think it's actually 253, not 233. But maybe there's a 20 number in here somewhere that I'm just missing.
There should be. I'm trying to pull it up right now.
I mean, if the ask to us is 50, I guess it's neither here nor there. Just like the numbers don't add up.
All right, but it'd be nice to know the whole project. Let's see.
Always. It's always good to have the numbers that add up.
Let me see.
Yeah.
So just using my calculator, the total in the boxes is 279.5. And if I subtract out 13,000 and 13,600, I get 252,921, 253,000.
Mm-hmm.
It's $250,000 for a playground.
And I have
Yeah.
to say, it's pretty common. And I don't want to say that's on the lower end, but it is on the lower end.
It is on the lower end. This was a, Mike, this is a rude and stunning education that we got a couple of years ago when the state came through our playgrounds and demanded that we upgrade them. And in credit to the then superintendent, I mean, she literally told them that we cannot and will not upgrade all of our playgrounds. And if you force us to do it on all of them, we will literally be forced to close playgrounds. And I think where they came out was and that was that. I mean, that was the the financial reality of the situation. It would have been $1 million across the playgrounds. We just didn't have the money. So I think they reached a deal and upgraded, I think, Osgood and Deer Hill. They upgraded some, but not all, was the bottom line. And this was one they did not.
Okay, so looking at that playground, and I did look at it today. What I see there are two structures that seem to be in decent condition. Now, Michelle was telling us that someone went out and evaluated and found rust and found some bolts that were, I don't know, missing, broken, what have you. When I've driven by there, I do see the playground being used by young mothers for the most part, smaller children. So I can see that it's getting good use. I just wonder, do we need to replace all of that equipment? So it's two things. Do we need to replace all the equipment? And do we need to replace the surface? And the surface is the killer. Because that's, looking at this chart, $114,000 just for the materials. It says materials and installation under the heading surfacing. Then installation by a certified installer. Oh, so that would be for the playground equipment. It's somewhat confusing, this quote to me. But, if we have to replace the surface with rubber, then I suppose, okay, you have to remove the equipment to put a new surface down. So what do you do with equipment that seems to still have life in it, a fair amount of life, just by my layperson's eye? But it doesn't look beat. It doesn't look dirty. It doesn't look rusty. It looks kind of, nicely maintained, just from a casual view. So here too, I'm not convinced of the need.
So Mike, you're saying rather than spend the 84 on the actual equipment, spend 30 on the repair of the existing equipment and put it on the new surface? That'd be my first thought. And here too, it brings in the whole question of maintenance. So if there are rusted bolts, or I'm sorry, Michelle, I didn't quite remember exactly what you told us that was wrong with it. But if we're not maintaining equipment, then we're doomed to replacing it. And yes, I appreciated it was installed 25 plus years ago, but it looks like it's in very good condition to my untrained eye. So here too, maybe a site visit is warranted. I think we just need to be convinced of the need, or at least I do, need to be convinced of the need. And do you know, Michelle, how much wood chip depth is there now? Do we maintain that?
In several places, I believe it was measuring at 7 inches. And there is some depth at 10 inches. However, it's not near any of the play equipment, which is the problem.
Yeah. So it has to be maintained. It has to be raked or leveled periodically so that wood chips, which get, displaced when kids jump or whatever. We would need as a town to make sure that we're constantly paying attention to that depth.
And I think the challenge there, and I agree with you on maintenance of everything, right? So I think the challenge there is we need someone to maintain our fields. We need someone to maintain our playgrounds. I don't know that we have the staff to maintain all of our recreational assets. And that's just my honest opinion.
Mm-hmm. So that begs the question, if we can't maintain it, are we a town that is going to just replace equipment periodically because we let it run down? That we dispose of it?
Well, I think
that's not for you, Michelle. That's just a rhetorical question.
Yeah, no, but I would like to add that I think maintaining the equipment is different than maintaining the wood chips. To maintain those wood chips at a level of 10 inches depth at all the playgrounds in town can become labor intensive and be very costly.
But we're required to by ADA.
Yes.
So that's a requirement. It's not something we can choose not to do. It's just troubling that we've got playground systems that we can't keep up to a requirement.
So Michelle, you mentioned a 7-year payback. Can you just, did I hear that correctly?
I did. So Nick had said to me, the return on investment is 7 to 9 years.
This is on a rubberized base?
Yes.
And how is that calculated? What is the revenue that comes in to offset the expense?
It's got to be cost versus cost. He's got to be,
yeah, it's cost
he's got to be comparing
cost.
the annual cost of wood chips over 7 or 9 years or whatever it is versus the install cost of the rubber base, which
he gave me a cost of, to maintain wood chips at Osgood and Deer Hill annually, it cost about $6,000. To maintain wood chips at the library in Beechwood, he's talking $8,000 annually.
That's each or total?
Total.
So it's called 4,000 at each of the library and Beechwood.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well that's more like a 20-year payback, but unless he was actually meaning to say 8 each.
He may have.
If it's eight each, then his math basically works, right? Hold on a second. Well, even then it's 114,000. Even at 8, it would take, take you 15 years. But it's, there's a path to break even. And what's the life of the rubberized base?
Rubberized base, 18 years is what I'm reading.
So it's about break even, basically. It's going to cost us the same over the life. Mm-hmm. Unless I'm missing,
I don't know if he calculated in the labor piece of wood chips, of installing the wood chips. Yeah.
That may be. It may just be the raw cost of the wood chips, and then he's got to factor in having a crew actually, take a truck up there, dump them, and spread them and level them. I guess my instinct is if that number is good, I'd like to understand. I'd like to understand the calculation. That goes a long way to, at least for me, to getting my head around the cost of the base.
Okay.
If it saves money in the end, it saves money in the end.
I'll have Nick give me that breakdown.
But it still begs the issue of the equipment. If we were going to go with the base, you certainly wouldn't want to be tearing out the equipment, halfway through the life of the base. But Michael's point's a good one. I mean, my instinct is to go drive out there. Is there a report from the consultant on the condition of that equipment?
There is.
Can you forward that to us?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I think that would be helpful. I mean, I'm not even sure. It would certainly look for structural rust. I'm not sure else what I would look for in order to determine whether the equipment was obsolete. But maybe after reading that, I would know more.
And, if there is rust, then maintenance would say you would treat it with, some sort of rust absorbing paint, Rust-Oleum that converts the rust to something usable. It just seems like, it looks to me like there's a lot of useful life in that equipment, and maybe I'm wrong. And that's why I think you're right. We should see the consultant's review. And to say it's 27 years old and needs replacing, that's not good enough. I'd want to know more about how it's deficient.
Okay, I'm pulling it up now. I might be able to share it.
And then the other thing I'd like to know more about, Michelle, is how do we get a program? Right now, for us to be compliant, we need to have a program where DPW periodically, just like they cut the grass, goes out and rakes and levels the wood chips to make sure that we are taking good care of that surface for those kids.
I agree. We need a maintenance plan for all of our fields, courts, and playgrounds. I agree with that. While I agree with that, I don't know how to get there with some of the limitations that we have, if that makes any sense.
Well, it just raises a huge question of why should we invest in tennis courts and pickleball courts and new fields if we're not maintaining them? I wish we could have a real heart-to-heart conversation with Nick and with you and with Chris on how we're managing our recreational facilities.
Yeah, I think we need to pull the schools into that too. A lot.
Yeah, we just can't go on saying, well, it's end of life,
right? And
we have to replace it. That just doesn't work in this day and age anymore. Stuff is just way too expensive. We have to take care of it. One man's view. I'm sorry if I'm.
No, it's capital replacement is not an alternative to maintenance. You're correct. It's a lot less expensive to maintain our stuff, Michael. So you're spot on. I think it's no secret that we missed an entire 10 years of maintenance altogether. And then we followed that with 10 years of underfunded maintenance, right? And that's where we are today.
Yep. So,
but Michelle, I'm curious, you said you made some reference to limitations. I'm not sure what the exact word was, but are you comfortable expanding on that? I mean, I think we'd like to understand what we're up against in terms of actually getting a real maintenance program in place.
Yeah, I just think
I say that really carefully because I don't want it misconstrued. I think the world of Nick Berardi, and he's doing a great job with the resources that he has, and and an overwhelming number of deferred maintenance items to deal with. So I don't want this misconstrued. But what are the limitations, and what do we need to do in terms of get people to rally behind, reinforcing our maintenance requirements?
Yeah, I just think, so I look in other communities that, make their investment in recreational activities, and, oftentimes there's a staff member just designated to maintaining those structures, right? They maintain the fields, the courts, the playgrounds, and that is their sole function. And I think with our current staffing levels, I don't think we have that person in place.
Right.
And I mean, DPW is also great, right? They mow the lawns, they weed whack, they do the best they can with the resources they have. But I don't know if they're specialists in fields, which does often take on a specialty of its own. We did just apply for a grant to have Nick or maybe Nick's assistant become a certified playground inspector. Therefore, they know what they're looking for. We're not paying someone to come do that annually. So we are taking small steps in the right direction. But I just worry that adding additional tasks, you know, such as the overall maintenance of all the recreational facilities to our staff that may not be trained to maintain them. Because, I mean, that's just my opinion from what I've read in other communities, but.
Okay, but there's not a structural limitation that you think we're up against other than resourcing this, literally.
Oh, no, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like next steps on the Beechwood is we need to see the study. We need to read the study. It sounds like to the extent people are curious and trying to justify this in their minds, you should take a ride out there and take a look at the equipment. Is that pretty much it? And we should try and figure this out by Monday?
If we can, yeah.
Okay. And Michelle, you're going to get us Nick's number in terms of the break-even analysis. Is that right?
Yes, I am. Yep.
Okay. I mean, that's always helpful. If we're just going to be spewing money on wood chips, and actually tasking our limited resources with another job that could be eliminated fundamentally by rubberizing this, we should keep that in mind.
Michelle, can I ask just one last question? In terms of square footage, is this playground substantially bigger than the one we currently have, or are they equivalent?
It's actually going to be slightly smaller.
Okay.
And that's how we cut some of the cost, was by reducing the footprint, reducing the rubber cost, which is the largest expense.
Okay.
One other comment I'd like to make. I appreciate that we are close to the end of our process of getting to special town meeting. But correct me, please, if I'm wrong. This is a new request that arose because we balked at the $320,000 price tag on a field study. That these playgrounds are coming up now in order to get some kind of help for our play spaces. Am I right or wrong on that?
So these playgrounds were always in play. They were always in the CPC bucket.
Okay.
So I don't know if that is.
But they weren't on earlier versions of our.
Yeah.
No, they were not.
Yeah,
Okay.
There's been no capital request, Michael, until tonight. There's been no capital request until tonight.
Right. So just speaking for myself, I'm more than happy to go out and look and try and get this done, but still I have those reservations.
You know, it does raise the broader question of when are these things suitable for the special town meeting? It never was the case that we would bring in items like this in the past that really do belong at the regular town meeting, as I had said before, where you weigh these projects against other projects in some kind of priority order. And you understand what the grant opportunities are. You understand what the CPC funding is going to be. And you come up with a judgment about what you can and can't do. If we do them at the special town meeting, we exclude their ability. That is, that subtracts from whatever money we actually do get at the regular town meeting. So we got to be careful about what things come in and are appropriate for this particular special town meeting.
I totally agree with you, Ralph. And, you know, we're going to get to some items where I raised the exact same question. You know, in the past, there had to be a really good reason to bring something in special. And it usually came down to the urgency of a security or safety related issue, right? So we have some of those, and we've voted some of those through already. One item that we voted through this year was, the expiration of the leases on the electric vehicles, right? That's in December. We can't wait till ATM. So, kind of clear, valid reasons. I think, some of these items we're looking at tonight. The security vestibule is a security issue. I think we're all tied up in the price, and understandably and rightfully so. But as we get into these rec requests, it's a real question as to whether or not there's an imminent safety issue there, or this is just trying to get them in the ground this summer. And if it's really the latter issue, then you're right. I mean, these are ATM requests. Just speaking, individually. I mean, unless there's an imminent issue that demands that this be funded at STM, not just the convenience of getting it in time for this summer, but there's something beyond that, then it's STM. But I don't know. I struggle with some of these being STM requests. So, anything else on this, or do we have our plan for Monday night?
I don't know if we'll be able to come to a conclusion on Monday night based on Ralph's comments and your assent to Ralph's comments.
I mean, I think we should each independently reflect on whether or not this is an ATM or STM request, and come Monday with you on that.
Okay. And certainly I'll go out and take another look.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to belabor the issue. Like, I totally get it. People would like to have the new playground for this summer, right? But does that in and of itself make this an STM appropriate request as opposed to the actual annual budgeting process?
Right.
I think we each need to reflect on that question. Okay, so we're on to the next item, which is the DPW HVAC. Well, let me just ask: is there anything further on Beechwood, or can we move on?
Move on.
Okay,
have we articulated the questions, Michelle, clearly for you?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Okay, so next item is the DPW HVAC shortfall. Certainly not a pressing, security or safety issue, but definitely I think probably falls into the bucket of cleanup items from past business. Michelle, what's the quick summary on this?
So this is the request that was funded at annual last year for the DPW. I think what happened here is that we didn't take into account all the electrical work needed and the fact that it was the commercial system. We fell short at that time by about $7,500 to get the job done. And with inflation, we are asking for 10 just to make sure we're covered. Of course, if we don't use the entire 10, we would turn back what we don't use.
Okay. So basically the pricing we got for the whole job came in above what we appropriated the last go round. Is that pretty much the bottom line? Okay.
Pretty much.
Okay. We've turned the screws on this one sort of aggressively in the past. I don't know if I have any other questions on it. Anyone else?
Well, were these the split systems? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I think the real problem with the design was that I looked at it. Carl wanted to bring in the split systems from the back of the building, which greatly increased the complexity of the whole thing. instead of mounting it directly on the front of the building where it belonged. And that has nothing to do with electricity. Electricity is a non-starter on those issues. It really is having to run that entire feed of both two copper lines plus a drain line all the way from the back of the building to the front. That's the problem. I can't dispute it anymore, but I can tell you the way it's been designed is incorrect. That's all. And very impractical, and probably at the very limit of what actually a split system can actually handle. But anyway, that's sorry for my personal opinion, but I put two of them in. I know what I'm talking about. But anyway.
And is that where they landed with the systems out back, or is this?
Yeah, they're out back, and they're having to run that copper all the way from the back to the front. And instead of having them wall mounted, they have to have them ceiling mounted. I mean, it's just a complete mistake of how that design is. And it was, oh, Carl, I talked to Carl. I said, Carl, that's a mistake. You should have that very nice, unobtrusive compressor to the left of the door, or to the right of the door as you look at it, right where he has a nice little grassy spot. And you would have no problem at all doing this at the cost we originally assigned to it. But anyway, I'm not going to dispute it anymore. If you have to put more money in, put more money in. But I do think it really is a design question.
And after Carl spoke with you, Ralph, he said, "You're wrong, Ralph. I'm doing it my way."
Yeah, well, no, we never would have a discussion quite anything like that. We always have very friendly conversations. But basically, he didn't want to do it my way. Basically, that's all.
Okay.
In spite of the fact, every other split system you've ever seen will be done my way. This is a very unusual way to do it. Anyway,
Okay.
that's the problem. But anyway, I'm not going to dispute it. If he wants 10,000, he has to do it his way. Let it be that way. I just hope he understands that that's not a very good way. I'm not even understand how he does his drain lines. And he didn't either. None of us can figure out how do you drain line something into the ceiling like that. But anyway.
I guess maybe just let the water run out and drain off the ceiling.
I don't know what you do. They're all designed to actually come in from the outside with a drain line that goes directly outside from where it is, right up against the wall. That's the way they're all done. This is a very unusual installation. Anyway.
Feels like once again we've overcomplicated something.
But anyway, I guess they are.
Okay, but I guess the takeaway from this is you've had this conversation with Carl and Carl's not moving. Is that the bottom line?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that he's not moving. I don't know where he is right now. Obviously, they've come back with the same design. That's what's happened here. Yeah. Right. So okay. I have not had a conversation since one last year. So, or earlier this year, as it turns out.
Okay. I'm not really sure what else to do about this. I feel like we're
just let it go. Just
okay.
Let it go. Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, on that note, somebody like to move this?
Yeah, I'll move it. I move that capital budget recommend to town meeting that we spend $10,000 toward additional HVAC work at the DPW building.
Yeah.
Money to come from stabilization funds?
Yeah, capital stabilization fund.
Yeah. Sound right?
I believe that's capital stabilization. Let me just check the warrant. Yes, it's number 6. Article 5, item number 6, the HVAC upgrades at the DPW.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
I know you guys are so excited about this.
No, I have to keep my thing on mute because my dogs sometimes bark.
I'm excited to just get this one off of our future agendas at this
right.
point, which I guess is one strategy. But okay, so we've got a motion in a second. Let's have a roll call vote. Susan Franklin, sorry, you got to come off mute again.
Aye. See?
There you go. Ralph Dormitzer.
Aye.
Michael Dick.
Mike Dick, aye.
And Brian Host, aye.
Okay. Ralph, you never fail to amaze me.
What do you mean?
I know you're right, is the bottom line. I just don't know what else to do with this. We've kicked this so many times. But
Right.
all I can say is when this system goes in, I hope it works.
Ralph, the reason I say that is I expected you to either abstain or vote no. No, what amazes me is your collegiality.
Well, fundamentally, that's correct in this case. What is the point of
Right.
objecting? That's
Right.
true.
So we can all learn from you, Ralph.
I don't know about that.
Look, we tried, right? We tried.
Right.
Okay. So next is another item, which is old business that I think we've appropriated and reappropriated several times over the past multiple years. Hopefully we can get this one done, which is the Milliken Concession Bathroom Project. Now, just a quick question, Michelle, before you jump in. I'm a little confused by what's on the warrant right now, because right now that's not showing as a capital project. It's showing up under one-time costs as number 9.
It is, but as we've talked about it, Brian, when we went through the list, it was originally a field study, but when it moved to concessions, sorry, now my dog is barking. We thought it was appropriate to come before capital because we
it definitely has to come before capital. Yeah.
We're looking to offset the cost for the concessions. We finally found a way to actually get the bathrooms and the concession stand, and things improved greatly today even. So everyone met up at the field. We're using the existing building that's there that was just refurbished, that's used for storage by the soccer folks and has a small concession. That existing building will be gutted. There'll be 2 handicap bathrooms, unisex handicap bathrooms, and a concession stand. And then by the baseball diamond, there's a shed over there that's used strictly by baseball and soccer today. Toward the shed, they realize there's enough room for both of them in that shed. They have to make some repairs to the shed. So we feel as though we can finally fund this project if in fact we get a total of another $100,000. So it was a one-time cost. The select board agreed on Tuesday that they would put in $130,000 towards that. So it would be $100,000 towards Milliken, and it would be $30,000 towards additional field study. So I don't know if you really need to vote any funds here, to be honest.
We have to vote no matter what, because regardless of the funding source, it's a capital item.
Right, but I don't know that you need to vote any. I don't know if there's any funds needed.
So I guess my question is CPC funding a portion of this? Have they been asked?
So CPC has, in 2017, CPC gave $188,000.
Okay.
And then they gave an additional $25,000 that has gone to repairs and other items up there.
So they're the majority of the funding today.
Yeah, so there's $137,000 left in that fund that CPC has already given.
Okay.
And the additional $100,000 will get us over, finally get us to the finish line.
Okay. All right, so CPC has done their heavy lift at this point. I'm pretty sure we put some money into this at one point or another as well, did we not?
I think you put money into the field, the baseball field, perhaps?
No, it was virtually certain we put some money into the Milliken Fieldhouse at one point, 2-3 years ago. But
oh, you put $15,000 in. Yes, you did.
Okay, so it wasn't a lot. Okay. Okay, so it's 100 coming from the town, straight out of free cash, as opposed to it running through the stabilization fund.
So it's up, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Chris said if it was to run through here, it would just be a transfer, because you had talked in the past about keeping capital items with capital
Well, that's what I'm pausing on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little weird to run it through free cash as opposed to just increasing the transfer into the stabilization fund and then funding this out of the stabilization fund as a capital budget project. I mean, we're just sort of understating our capital spend is sort of the reality of it. Same project, same amount of funding coming from the town. It's just, you know, we're losing track of how much it really costs to run the capital projects in the town when we run it through free cash and not through capital transfers. If that makes any sense.
It does.
I mean, my instinct is I would rather see it come out of Article 4, move into Article 5,
Okay.
and and increase the appropriation to capital budget, the capital stabilization fund by the 100,000 out of free cash, which gets you to the exact same place, right? You're spending the $100,000 on this project. You're just cycling it through the accounts in a way that actually reflects what what it costs to fund the capital of this town.
That's a very good point.
The flip side of it is somebody's going to put their hand up and say, well, why are we transferring so much into the capital stabilization fund? And I guess we need to be ready to have a straight-faced answer to that, which is we've been underfunding capital for 20 years. And it shows everywhere you look. So that would be my preference. It's not a religious issue that that ends the world or anything, but that's the right way to do it, is to move it out of here and into Article 5, and then just increase the capital stabilization transfer by 100,000, and then we'll pay for it.
Okay.
But they have to go hand in hand. Don't drop it into Article 5 without giving us the 100 grand. That's the worst.
There is some
Okay.
risk, as you understand.
Yeah, like the new roads program. There you go. Okay. So questions about the project itself. We got sidetracked on how it appears in the warrant, how it's funded. I think we're all on the same page there, unless anyone objects. Okay. Questions about the project itself?
Sounds to me like it's predominantly plumbing.
Sorry, Susan?
Sounds like it's predominantly plumbing, because right now the building does not have plumbing.
Correct.
And so that brings a question up of why only one male and one female bathroom? If you're going to all this trouble to put in plumbing, why not cut down the concession stand space and have a total of 4 bathrooms?
From what I understand, and I will receive a plan as soon as probably next week. My understanding is because they are unisex ADA accessible bathrooms, they're oversized, and we can't fit 4 within that structure. But I can ask that question.
It just seems like a lot of money, $250,000, to really provide 2 bathrooms. I don't think a concession stand is that important, whereas bathrooms certainly are.
So Michael, your suggestion is maybe squeeze the concession space a little bit to get more bathrooms in there?
Yes. And, I'm curious, who runs the concession stand, and is there an enterprise fund behind it? Should there be?
It's usually parents, probably the soccer boosters.
So typically the soccer boosters or whomever it may be funds all the items for the concessions, and they use it as almost a fundraising effort.
Mm-hmm.
So should that be an enterprise fund?
I don't think I understand the question.
The concession stand is there to generate some kind of income. Otherwise, I don't see a real strong need to have a concession stand as a convenience for people. Certainly understand bathrooms as an important convenience. But if the concession stand is there to generate income, and then I wonder why we shouldn't have it as an enterprise fund and keep track of the revenue and make sure that the revenue is going to where it will benefit the town. Otherwise, we're spending $250,000. Some of that $250,000 is supporting the fundraising for a program rather than benefiting the whole town or all the users up there.
Yep. So what other communities do is they charge a user fee for the day. So if soccer is going to be using the concession stand, they pay a user fee to recreation, and then they use it for the day. They fill it with their own goods and they sell their own goods out of it. And the same would hold true for baseball. If baseball was going to use it, they would pay a fee to the town and they would sell their goods out of it. I don't know if anyone else has heard of this before, but that's typically how other towns run it.
Yep.
And that's what we're doing too.
I don't, not right now. Oh, sorry, Susan.
I was just gonna, yes, that is how I know other towns do the same thing. The town I grew up in, I know my nieces and nephews, I was just there last weekend and that's how their town does it as well. But my question is more 270 square feet for a snack shop that's not going to be cooking anything, but just basically selling, you know, pre-made items like bags of chips and beverages and bottles seems a little large. To Mike's point about making the bathroom bigger.
Or more, you know, to be able to accommodate more people at the same time.
Yeah, and I'm happy to go back to them. Like I said, they were all up there today, the building inspector, Brian Joyce, a contractor, trying to lay it out the best they could. I believe Teriyaki's the one that's going to draw up the plan. And if we say we want more bathrooms and see if they can squeeze them in, I'll just get that note to them tomorrow and see how much we can maximize the use of this space.
Right. Without adding to the cost.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Michael,
the structure is the structure. It's just how you want to configure the inside. It seems like it can be a little more useful on the inside as bathroom space,
Right.
and
especially when it comes to bathrooms.
be able to run a good concession.
But Michael, I mean, just to manage expectations, if you go from 2 bathrooms to 4 bathrooms, you've added fixtures and plumbing. I mean, the price will go up. There's no
fair
way to get 4 for the same price.
I stand corrected, but I would not expect it to be a very large.
To double. I hear you.
Yeah.
We couldn't just add additional toilets in a single room, one for men's and one for women, and just have stalls around them?
I think that's an option for sure.
Okay.
The thrust
it's an option, but then you lose unisex, which can be helpful in certain circumstances.
No, I'm just saying that because they're labeled as men and women's on the plan right now.
Yeah. I totally see what you're looking at. I'm looking at the exact same design. Now, so Michelle, you had mentioned earlier they would be unisex ADA accessible. Mm-hmm. And I think Susan's looking at the teriyaki design that I'm looking at right now as well. One's labeled men's, one is labeled women's. There's also a substantial storage space still in this design.
Right. So this was the design we had at this moment in time. So I uploaded it.
Got it.
Like I said, they met today at 2:00 this afternoon, all on site. So that the plan has been revised.
Okay.
Originally, we were going to have to purchase a new shed for them. So that went away as well. So.
Okay. So the bottom line is the new design will be concessions, bathrooms, and no storage. Storage is going to move to the shed.
Correct.
And okay.
You have plenty of room then.
Well, yeah. I mean, just first glance, there should be plenty of room for 4 instead of 2. But that's at a glance. All right. what do people want to do on this one? Do we want to have those questions answered before we vote this through? I mean, if they go to 4, the price is probably going to go up a little bit, would be my guess. Maybe not.
3 or 4 or a configuration.
Yeah, more than 2. Yeah.
We're spending a lot of money to put plumbing in. Let's maximize the benefit of that plumbing.
And is the thought that you guys would like to hear back from them before we vote this and just do it Monday? Or do you want to just vote this through and ask them to continue to improve the plan? What do you want to do? Feels like we might want to get an answer, a little more feedback. Michelle, do you think that's viable?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's viable.
Okay.
Okay.
I ask a question about this kind of facility. It strikes me interesting that the town buys or pays for it. And I understand that the somehow or other a fee could be assigned for use of the field, but effectively a sports team takes advantage of it and has the value associated with whatever they sell. It is a very confused model, to be perfectly honest with you. On top of which, the maintenance of the building, including the cleaning of the bathrooms, whose responsibility is this? It all feels as though this is kind of a mixed up, what would I call it, structure, okay, of how do you actually manage such a thing? And it really deserves a serious consideration of how, in fact, should you really structure something that the town buys and ultimately ends up being responsible for, irrespective of whether or not the team does get income from these concessions. It is a strange kind of arrangement, to be perfectly honest with you. I think we end up owning the whole problem, but we don't get any revenue unless we have fees. And I'm not sure that's a good way to do it. I don't know. I'm not trying to say we should change it. I'm just saying it feels very strange. It's not a bit like, for example, Sandy Beach, where in fact the Sandy Beach nonprofit actually runs it, bought it, paid for it, got the support from the community to build it, and therefore have all responsibility. That's clean. This one's not clean.
No. And it's a good point on maintenance. Here we go again.
Yeah.
So if we're not able to keep wood chips to 10 inches, how are we going to also maintain this structure? In winter too. Yeah.
For example, shutting off the lines. I mean,
is it year round, or do we turn the water off?
Think about this stuff, right? So.
Well, yeah, it really does come down to the bathrooms when I think.
Yeah.
Who cleans the bathrooms? Who goes and and snakes a drain when it gets plugged up? Who responds when one of these things gets plugged up and overflows?
Right. Who unlocks it? Who locks it up?
And locks it at night so that, so that it doesn't become a destination.
Well, we do have a building like this at the baseball field that was privately funded, and it's completely operated by the Baseball Association. They clean it, They maintain it, they lock it, etc.
And do we have something analogous to that over at this field?
Well, I think that maybe a little bit of the difference here is that this field is a town field and it's used by the high school as well, not just sports teams. Michelle, is that kind of the thinking, or?
I mean, they're both town fields, are they? I mean, I'm not sure I pick up on the difference. I mean, the baseball.
Well, that was funded. So that was funded by a privately funded construction.
Okay, it's true.
And actually the shed that's there now, to my understanding, was funded solely by Cohasset Youth Soccer.
Okay. And Michelle, you mentioned, I think at the select board meeting, that up to now, the town has put in, I assume, seasonal porta potties.
Oh, yes. Yep.
And that's now become untenable?
Yes. It has been for a couple of years now. The neighbors really want to see this project finished. They don't want to look at porta potties any longer. They've been more than patient, they feel. And it's just, they're just not great. It's just,
Yeah.
I mean, the field is very busy.
Yes, it is. Who currently foots the bill on the porta potties? Is that the soccer league or the town?
It's recreation, I believe.
So it's actually running through the rec operating expense.
Mhm.
To run the porta potties.
I believe so.
Okay, so there's some benefit to the town, back to the town by having this, but I suppose we'd have to pay for sewer and water if we put in, you know, potable toilets.
Right.
Okay.
So the questions I have are management for maintenance and for day-to-day operation. Locking, unlocking, and maintenance is not only daily maintenance, but seasonal maintenance.
Okay.
Anything I'm leaving out for running it, for managing it?
No, that's the operating side, and then there's simply the design. Can we get 4 bathrooms in here instead of 2?
Right. And the message is we're most interested in bathrooms and less interested in concessions. We feel that concessions are a nice to have. I shouldn't say we, nice to have, but not essential.
Yeah, I guess one of the questions, Michelle, I mean, all of our, I think we're, certainly I personally, I think others on this call are instinctively thinking more bathrooms is better. But, you know, is 2 the right number? I mean, do we, you know, if we put 4 in there, is that just a waste? I just don't know. I don't know my guess is a lot of people don't use the porta potties that
Right.
use bathrooms. So
I can tell you this, that
how many
down
we
at
need.
Parker Avenue, there's 2 bathrooms there,
Yeah,
and they are in constant use.
and you never have a crowd there like you have here. I mean,
Yeah.
the crowds here are much greater.
Right.
All right. You know, Michael, I don't necessarily dispute the priority. The bathrooms are important. You know, I would say that the concession stand, the place wouldn't be the same for the kids without a concession stand. It's
fine,
something about getting a ring,
but it doesn't have to be, a concession stand doesn't have to be built out.
Yeah.
To the size that it is.
Fair enough. Okay. So we got a couple of questions on that one. We'll revisit it on Monday. Is there anything else on this, or should we move on to the lacrosse wall?
All set.
Okay. I guess I just preface this one by saying this really feels like an annual town meeting request to me. I'm not sure how at least I individually would elevate this to the urgency of an STM, but I apologize for leading off with that. We should probably hear the request.
So what I can say about the last few requests, I feel like we're getting information almost daily on them as they come about. The lacrosse wall has been something they've been talking about for some time now. We have been looking at alternatives to what you see on the OneDrive. That is a concrete wall. I've been asked by the select board to look at some different alternatives to see if there's anything that we can do that's less expensive. I did reach out to my my network at USA Lacrosse to see what they've done in other communities, and I'm waiting for a call back. There is another option that we could possibly look at. I have no idea of the cost. It just came about this afternoon. They just released it about 6 months ago. It may fill the same need as a lacrosse wall. It's more mobile than this concrete structure. And with us planning this big field study, maybe that's our better option. I don't know. I don't have a cost on it. I know nothing more than that. So right before us now, the only thing we have is this concrete wall.
And where would it be located?
So the lacrosse folks would love it to be located at Sawyer Street, on the grassy area by the train tracks. And because it's a well-lit area, you have the basketball courts there. Kids that aren't playing basketball could practice lacrosse with the lacrosse wall. And it's well lit. It was slated to be at Milliken. If there was to be a renovation up there, people weren't wild about that idea because it's dark. They don't want it to be a place where kids gather.
And who determines the need for this? Why do we need a lacrosse wall? And the reason I ask this, both my boys played, and both of them played off the wall at Deer Hill. There's a blank brick wall, until they realized they got much better at it by having a lacrosse bounce back in the backyard. So if the coaches are saying we need it as part of our daily training, I might be inclined to say, okay, it's a coach's thing. They see that as something helpful. But if it's just a place for kids to go practice, like they go play basketball, basketball's a game. But a lacrosse practice wall is not a game. It's not a place where people gather and play together as a sport. It's just a place to practice. And so I'd want to know more about the need rather than is it just nice to have again. And then the whole idea of having a lacrosse wall with the woods behind it, when kids get the ball up and over a 16-foot wall, which they will, are they going to start looking to find their lost ball in the woods back there? It just seems like, and maybe a 16-foot wall has been proven to be, that's the right height. Don't know, but the whole thing seems like nice to have, and I don't see the real need.
So I'll interject. I echo a lot of the same concerns. So my daughter plays lacrosse, and I play catch with her all the time. A wall is not something that kids, plural, use. A wall is something that one kid uses when there's not another kid available to throw the ball back and forth. So it's kind of an odd facilities request to have a great big wall for conceptually one kid. Like Michael, like your boys, my daughter has a bounce back. She got it in Cohasset yard sale for $50. Mm-hmm. They're all over town.
Yeah, everybody has them, and they all end up at the yard sale.
Yeah, and they all end up at Cohasset yard sale. I mean, it's just an odd thing. Like, a wall is not something a team uses. A wall is not something that a program uses. I mean, my daughter plays club. They all arrive at the same place and they play lacrosse. They don't go to a wall somewhere. Yeah. It's a very weird request. I don't get it. I don't get it.
Even if we don't really understand the use of it, I just feel like without having a field study done on what we're going to use our fields for, it's like we're buying the toys before we know where we're going to put them.
Yeah. I think even if we end up buying a couple of lacrosse fields, I'll still wrestle with this one. I just don't get it. Yeah. But
it's also about as ugly as you can imagine.
Well, no, yes.
Yeah, at least the tennis wall you can put inside the tennis court.
That's right. That's right.
So I can make a motion to not recommend. I don't know if we have any other real questions that would advance this.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what I'd suggest is bifurcating it. I mean, if the lacrosse folks want to come to us and explain to us why this is an important part of their program, I guess we should owe them the courtesy of an audience. But even if they were to do that, I don't see how this becomes a special town meeting request. There's no safety issue around here. There's no security issue around this. There's nothing that causes any sense of urgency to elevate this, to STM outside of the annual process. To me, I'm just curious if other people have views.
I think that's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
It's an annual town meeting request. That's what it is. Right.
It's an ATM request that leaves us baffled, and they are going to need to come and explain it to us. And recognize that 3 or 4 people on this call have kids that played lacrosse.
Michelle, I don't see installation.
So the quote for the wall, I believe, came in at like $9,600. The installation cost would be the remainder for our contractor to level the area to set up the wall.
So Michael, on the wall quote, there's a set fee. So they, this is prefab, they bring it in and they'll probably have some kind of a crane truck and drop it in place. But it's that it requires the ground to have been leveled in a gravel base in place. So
that's something we would do, yeah?
Yes, well, it's probably IREA, under contract from us, but, requires a little bit of excavation to get down below the organic levels. And then, you add, it's probably several feet of gravel, and then they compact it.
Right.
So there is a little bit more money involved than just what you see on that quote. Okay, so what do we have to formally do on this one? Do we just informally tell them to come back at annual town meeting and be prepared to explain the need for this, or do we technically vote this down? It's not a formal request in front of us other than this conversation, honestly, but.
I mean, do you want to recommend no action on it, and we can just have a follow conversation?
I think, yeah, why don't we actually make a recommendation for no action vis-a-vis STM? And recommend that they defer this to ATM and annual town meeting and come prepared to really justify it.
Right. With a location.
And a location, yeah. I mean, it's not a huge amount of money, but it's kind of besides the point. I think we just don't get it. We don't get the request, and we don't get the timing. So would someone like to make such a motion that we did defer this to annual town meeting?
You guys gonna let me move everything, or? I don't mind. I just
think that's an invitation, Susan.
Okay, I already started writing down a motion to recommend no action and deferral to annual town meeting, and that we would like information about potential location and
the need,
site work, and the cost of site work.
But,
and the need.
Need.
How this fits into their program.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So that's your motion, Susan? Or is that the draft?
No, I'm putting in need. All right, so a motion to recommend no action and defer to annual town meeting with additional information with respect to the need, potential locations, and the cost of site work.
Okay. I'll second.
All right. Roll call vote. Susan Franklin.
Aye.
Ralph Dormitzer.
Aye.
Michael Dick.
Mike Dick, aye.
Brian Host, aye. Okay, that's the wall. And last up is the electric school bus. So I think, if I recall correctly, about a week ago, 10 days ago, we sort of voted moral support for this, but there wasn't an official ask. Is this now an official ask, Michelle?
It is not an official ask yet because they're going before the school committee next Wednesday. And I believe it's going to be too late to actually appear on the warrant with any recommendations. So if the school committee does agree to it, maybe town meeting floor vote.
Okay. Yuck. I'm just trying to think how to navigate this. What's the absolute cutoff on the warrant?
I think they're trying to vote the warrant Tuesday evening.
Wow. Wait, but advisory's meeting next Wednesday.
Yeah, it may have changed. I wasn't in the office today, but as far as I know, they were voting to close the warrant on Tuesday.
We can always make our judgment at Florida Town meeting anyways.
Yeah. We can, but the item needs to be in the warrant, right?
That has to happen by the selectmen, right? Select board.
Yeah.
So it's moot from our perspective at this point. So.
Well, the question is whether or not we want it there. And if we want it there, we should tell the selectmen that we want it there. People don't have to vote on it before the warrant goes to print, but I think it has to be in the warrant if you want to be able to vote on it at town, on town, at town meeting. Does that make any sense, what I just said?
Well, if it is not in the warrant, there's no point in our discussing it. And since we don't know if it will be there, why bother at this moment? Okay.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is we have the ability, certainly have the ability to steer one way or the other. I mean, if we feel strongly it should be in the warrant, we'll tell the board of selectmen. I mean, it's our job to advise them, right? Technically. Doesn't always go in that order, but that is technically the way it's supposed to work. I guess a couple of thoughts on this. First of all, the request is not $125,000 because and Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but we would be approving entering into a multi-year lease, but we would you can only appropriate for a fiscal year. And my understanding is in the public sector, these leases all have, an annual funding clause that basically says if you don't get funding the next year, the lease goes away and it's over. And that's just the way it's done in the public sector. I'm pretty sure that's how we've done it on, in fact, I know that's how we've done it on the school buses. And jump in here, Susan, you know that's better than.
Yeah, fiscal funding out clause.
Yeah, and it's also the way we did it on the heavy haul tractor up at the DPW. So you enter into a multi-year lease, but you only appropriate 1 year's worth of lease payments at a time in that fiscal year. So really what we would need to appropriate, we would need to vote to approve entering into a lease, right, at a $25,000 a year annual cost. And then we would need to vote to appropriate, 1 year's worth of lease payments in order to take delivery of the bus and enjoy it for the first year. So I think that's really what what we need to consider tonight or Monday or whatever the case may be. I also think the 125 is not for a the 125,000 number you see here on the agenda is not for a 3-year, that's for a 5-year lease. If I'm not mistaken, it was $25,000 a year. Michelle, do you
That is correct.
Okay, so I guess what I'd suggest is, we don't know if we want a 3-year or a 5-year at this point. We don't know if we want, lease to lease, lease to goodbye or lease to buy. In other words, do you just lease it and then hand them the keys at the end of the lease, or do you want the buyout? Do you want to own it at the end, which are different prices? But regardless, at ATM, we will be appropriating money for to lease buses at at roughly this cost per year. And as long as this is replacing one of those, I'm kind of indifferent, or should I say favorably disposed. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. So I just, with all that said, I'm just curious kind of what other people what other people think and feel at this moment. I mean, I'd kind of like to give Tanya what she needs to move this thing forward. If we're all sort of on the page that if it's going to cost the same and it's electric bus, why not?
Yeah, I think that you're just summarizing pretty much what we came to at the end of the last meeting.
Yeah,
I agree.
so I you know, my recollection was it wasn't a formal ask, and so we didn't do a formal vote. And there were a couple of items outstanding, which is, you know, are the schools on board? Number one, because ultimately they're the operator, and number two, you know, do we have parking and charging location worked out? Sounds like we're not going to get an answer on the school until Wednesday. Michelle, do we have any update on the parking and charging? Is that resolved, or is it just an idea at this point?
So we can park the bus at the recreation lot. It is
The rec lot. Do you mean behind the library or the
yes,
center?
behind the library. There's 2 charging stations there. They can park there, charge the bus there.
Okay.
We're also working on a plan to put bus parking in front of the Deer Hill School.
Okay.
But once again, I don't know when that plan would come to fruition. So the immediate plan would be to keep the bus behind the library.
Behind the library.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So that's a little bit of a change from the last call. I thought it was adjacent to the, what do you call it, teen center area?
The teen center.
Yeah.
They were going to park it in the public parking lot?
Maybe we misunderstood, but that is kind of what I understood as well, which is there was an opportunity at the teen center.
Oh.
Sounds like we may have misunderstood.
Or maybe I just didn't get that.
Okay. Okay. So I guess the question is, do we want this on the warrant or not?
I think we should. I think it's a step in the right direction to move towards electric buses. The price is right. It allows us to run a pilot program.
Yeah.
So as long as the school agrees, I think we should. So if the school says, yes, let's go for it, then we want to get it on the warrant. And tonight we would vote to recommend it.
Okay, look, we can always pull it, right? I mean, it's $5,000. It's not 250 grand. So we can always, appropriate it. You can always approve them entering into a lease and appropriate the first year payment at 25 grand. And if they're, if the school doesn't want to do it and the warrant's already gone to print, we can always just scratch it at amend it on the floor. It's easy to scratch an item and spend is just 25,000 less.
Mm-hmm.
I think it gets very complicated to add something that didn't appear in the print. So that's my instinct would be to put it in and vote it through if everyone's comfortable with that.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other thoughts, Susan? You're the same place?
Yep.
Ralph, thoughts?
I'm definitely not in that place at all. Okay.
Okay.
In the absence of any numbers that I know that are real, for example, how much does it really cost to do a regular bus? And what does this cost? What's the differential between the two? I don't know that number.
Yeah.
Number two, no thought given to, if you're talking about ultimately moving to a fleet, where the heck are you going to put this fleet? Who's going to actually put in all the charging stations? In other words, this is a nice wish. It has little to do with anything other than a wish, and it doesn't prove much other than you can drive one. I mean, it doesn't mean anything. So it's I hate to use the word virtual signaling, and that's all it really is. Unless you have a real plan ultimately to take all of your 10 or 12 school buses and do it, and you know where you're going to put them, you know where the charging stations are, you know where the power is going to come from. You got a lot of things to sort out here rather than just simply say, oh, we're going to try this one out, see how it works. We know it works. It doesn't gain you anything. I'm puzzled by this thinking. I am.
Well, we actually did get a pretty thorough presentation from Tanya. And I correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but I think the charging station was being provided by the company that we're getting the bus from.
That's correct.
Yeah, I mean, she did go through all those questions with us.
So Ralph, a couple of clarifying points. We do know what the cost is of the existing buses. You know, and basically what happened here is that the provider, and I forget the name of the company, had another town lined up, and the other town couldn't get their act in gear, and so they have a bunch of grants against this bus. It's a $300,000 bus, and they want to, you know, they want to roll one out to take advantage of those grants and fundamentally have a test case. Not just on the bus, but the charging and how to optimize the charging so that you're buying juice at the lowest moment in time, and you know you can even feed juice back into the grid, you know, during peak hours and whatnot. So this is very much a test case for the partner that's providing the bus, and it's a test case to us to just frankly learn. Tanya, to her credit, basically held the line and said, I don't care if it's a $300,000 bus. You have to, you know, if you want us to be your guinea pig, you need to provide it to us at the same cost as it costs us to lease a traditional and lease and run a traditional diesel bus. And so that's where this $25,000 number came from. I think we're in for $22,000 or $23,000 a year lease cost on our existing buses. And, you know, we appropriate another like $1,500 for maintenance, and then we pay for the gas. This $25,000 number covers all those things and the electricity. So we're actually kind of getting the fuel for free, you know, relative to, you know, to what we're doing right now in terms of running our own diesel buses. And the lease cost, and this is really interesting, no one picked up on the fact that, you know, the lease cost that they were sort of compelled to hit is a 4-year-old number. Like, we can't lease a new bus for 22 grand. The prices of, you know, the prices have gone up. So it's actually lower, probably substantially lower than, you know, than our next round of buses will be. So it's, you know, just consider it economically a wash, and it's an opportunity for us to move to a, you know, an electrical bus and learn whatever it is that we're going to learn about, you know, running an electrical bus in our fleet. Rather than literally doing a hard cutover from zero to the entire fleet in one shot, and, you know, running the risk of regretting it in some way just because we had never, you know, had no prior experience with, you know, with an electrical bus. That's the thinking behind it. I don't know if that helps you, but it makes
it even less attractive, to be honest with you, because what it says is that this is a one-off. And then when you get a whole fleet, your costs are going to be substantially more because the bus itself costs so much more. So it's a real one-off without very much value. All you learn is you can run one. The only learning you're going to get out of this thing is whether or not having to heat that bus at the same time you run it in the middle of the winter, whether it really stands up to that. Because you're not heating up just a cabin, you're heating an entire bus full of kids. So it's a very different situation. So you learn that, but you don't learn anything else. You really don't learn anything. They are just vehicles that you run, like buying a Tesla. You run it, you run it. You don't know anything more than that it works. So it has no particular value unless you figured it all out. And I think figuring it out says, what happens if you go and get leased? Okay. And where are you going to put them? Where are you going to charge them? How, you know, it just simply is a total one-off. That's all it is. You know?
It is a one-off in one sense. I mean, I don't think we're moving to you know, fleet of electrical buses next year, right? And it may be the electrical buses never compete with diesel buses directly on price. I mean, that's a possibility, but my instinct is that they're going to have to in time, right?
I think there are benefits beyond just running a bus, and it goes to the electric technology, the ability to use the buses for battery backup, and the potential for selling power back to the grid. So those are benefits. I think it is time for this town to start looking toward renewable, sustainable energy for its operations. And here's a golden opportunity for us to at least start down that road. And if it's only just another bus, well, I just think it's worth our investigation, particularly since we're getting it at such a good price.
You made many good points, Michael, but I totally forgot about the fact that you can use this as a backup generator, right? So, you can literally drive this to a site, plug it in and reverse the charge and feed something for some period of time off of it. Don't know what that may be, but
well, technically, if you did that, you need an inverter on the other side. This is not, you don't plug it into anything. You have to have another piece of equipment, right? So this is not so trivial, right? So,
no, but I believe that's all provided with this system. That is
an inverter. It converts to 120.
We would have to ask Tanya to be sure.
60 hertz.
But
I don't know. My understanding is just like a Ford F-150 Lightning. You can literally run stuff off of it.
So we can certainly find that out too, Ralph.
Okay.
To see if those are real benefits.
I mean, that's a, to me, that's icing. I mean, I am interested in getting experience with an electrical bus before moving towards a fleet. And I think Ralph's point is accurate about the cost. I mean, it may never be cost competitive, but I think between incentives and cost declines when production of these things really ramps up and they go mainstream, they've got to reach a compelling level vis-a-vis diesel to get people to move over. And I don't know, if we can do that without incremental cost today to actually learn now, I'd feel a lot more comfortable with that experience under, just individually, I'd feel a lot more comfortable with that experience under our belts before flipping over to an entire fleet of these things. So, if it doesn't cost us anything, I'm inclined to get the schooling on this one. And Ralph, I totally hear you. I understand you're in a different place. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? No, Susan, anything?
No.
Ralph, one last shot at convincing a mistake.
I could make a number of arguments, but there's no point in doing it at this stage.
So you're writing us off as a lost cause. Okay. Let's move on with the virtue signaling at least. And would somebody like to make a motion that that should fundamentally be to approve entry into a multi-year lease and to appropriate the first fiscal year of funding of that lease at $25,000?
Yes, but I think the motion should also include the language you mentioned, Brian, about it's a multi-year lease that can be canceled during the contract.
Yeah,
cancelable.
That's state law. There's no other.
Okay.
There is no other public sector lease, as I understand it. Susan, I know you know this better than me, but is that accurate?
Yeah, generally, yes. Leases to municipalities have the fiscal funding out clause in the standard contract, but we could put in there that we want it.
In the motion.
Yep.
Okay. Put it right in the motion.
Okay.
And I don't want this motion to be too complicated, but we can decide at a later date whether it's a 3-year lease, a 5-year lease, lease to lease or lease to own. What we're trying to do is give Tanya what she needs so that the counterparty knows they have a client and can order the bus.
Right.
They don't seem to care which of the lease flavors we ultimately enter into. So I think we can figure that part out later.
Okay.
Susan, could you read back what you've got there?
Motion to approve entry into a multi-year lease with a municipal fiscal funding out clause and appropriate the first year of lease payments at $25,000.
Correct.
Yep. And it
municipal funding out clauses is what you called it?
Municipal fiscal funding out clause.
Okay.
Which means if we don't get funding next year, we're out of the lease.
Mm-hmm.
And I presume we want to make this subject to approval by the school committee.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Okay. I mean, ultimately, they are the operator. It's, it is their choice.
So contingent on school committee assent? Approval?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll second that motion.
Susan, you moved it. Is that correct?
Yes, I did. Would you like me to read it
Michael
again?
seconded it. We'll do a roll call vote. Susan Franklin?
Aye.
Ralph Dormitzer?
Well, in this case, I will abstain, and I think rightfully so. I haven't heard Tanya's presentation, and I probably have many other questions. So it's not appropriate for me to even vote on it, I think. So it's not to say no or yes. I just don't know enough at this point. So, yeah.
To totally respect the position, even if it were no. Michael Dick.
Mike Dick, aye.
Brian Host, aye.
I do have one comment. Don't put it at the library, for sakes. Yeah. What a way to spoil an environment, right?
Sorry, your recommendation is to not put it at the library?
Oh my God, don't put it there. Sometime read a really, really good book that maybe it would be influential about how you think about a lot of things. It's called it's the American, it's about the, I'm forgetting the exact name. It's about the American architects, about Frank Lloyd Wright, not Frank Lloyd Wright, it was Fred Law Olmsted and Richardson, Henry Hobson Richardson. And it is a powerful understanding of how do you make sure that what you do when you put in public facilities, that you accommodate not only nature, but good use for people. And it's very powerful to think about things in a way which says, do not hurt our environment by what we do, even though it might sound good. So anyway. Do
you remember the title?
Yeah. In fact, let me go grab it. While you're noodling on something else, I'll go grab it.
Right. Capital Budget Committee Book Club.
Even more powerful that they wrote it probably in 1900.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called The Architects of the American Landscape. Architects of the American Landscape by Howard, I'm forgetting even his name, but anyway, it is a very, very good book and is particularly, I call it surprising to the degree to which these individuals so profoundly affected what we see and enjoy as public parks and public spaces today, including Trinity Church, New York's the Central Park, the Emerald Necklace, just so many beautiful and marvelous things, but they had insights about what it should be and how we should think about things. And I'm really serious about, let's not screw ourselves up by doing things which we might regret later on. But anyway, that's all.
And the author again?
The author is, I guess, Hugh
Howard. Yeah.
Hugh Howard, yeah, I think it's Hugh.
Thank you.
So bottom line is put the school buses at a school building.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
All right. There's one item that I seem to have skipped over, and I'm looking at the time, it's 9:18, so I don't want to belabor this. Maybe we pick this up Monday. But we did not talk about the Milliken Field study. Michelle, is there,
Well, we have the elevator to take up.
Oh, we still have the elevator as well. Can we spend a few minutes on the Milliken Field study that seems to appear in the warrant as a free cash item? Yeah, 25 grand free cash, Milliken Field study. What is that?
That is just a continuation of the field study that we funded last year. So there was a $40,000 given towards the field study. And that was to look at all fields in town, look at all land in town to see where we could maximize our recreational space. And we've asked the landscape designer that we're working with for several revisions. We've maximized our $40,000, and we're looking to continue the conversations to see how to best use our recreational space in town and create more.
Okay. So it's an extension of the study. I mean, what specifically are we going to be asking them to do with the next $25,000 increment?
So we've had several revisions of Milliken Field. We're looking at additional space in town, which would be outside the recreation center there, that green space. We've had them even look at private parcels. I just think we're looking to have them fine tune a study that the entire community can agree on. As of late, we presented the Milliken Field plan as proposed. We received a ton of feedback that they'd like to see more walking paths, more equipment for our aging population, additional pickleball courts. So the requests go on, and we've run out of we've run out of funding to actually take a look at any of these other requests.
Who's guiding this effort? Who's leading this effort? Who's making decisions on, well, we have enough information to do a phase one, and a phase one could be simply developing options to be reviewed by some other agency or committee.
So I believe this is just select board goal.
All right.
It's a select board goal, but who's driving the project and driving the decisions as to what we would actually ever possibly consider funding?
Well, so we had the initial study. The initial study identified deficiencies we have within our recreational space. So we're looking to mitigate some of that has been identified. And it's been mostly, I would say, run by or guided by the select board goal.
I guess, let me ask the question differently. So we hired a consultant to study our fields, and they came back with, $10 million worth of fields that we need. Mm-hmm. What group of people is actually testing their conclusion as to whether or not we actually need those fields?
Evaluating.
So I would say I would say most users of the field. So you have your lacrosse, your soccer, your baseball, and you have all your youth athletics. You have your boosters that are interested.
But are they organized into some kind of working group?
So they attend the public forums as they come about. There is no formal, I would say, working group. It's recreation. It really is.
So who's running the forums?
I haven't heard of any forums. When were they held?
Yep. So we had one, I believe, in January. There was one in March. I think there was one over the summer. I'm not entirely sure. The designer is actually running the forums. I'm running the forums with the designer. In attendance are neighbors and I guess youth organizations and boosters have been the primary participants.
At the risk of just touching the third rail, I mean, or maybe just reaching for it. I mean, I'm just very concerned that we're putting the designers very much in sort of a front and center role in driving this process and going directly to people and asking them, well, what would you like, right? And I mean, everybody would like a whole bunch of stuff until they're actually faced with paying for it. And I guess I'm questioning, where in the process we create the tension to decide or determine what we actually need to what's truly a deficiency, what is an actual need versus a wish list.
So I think the field study did identify actual needs. The needs are rectangular fields in town. Ours are overused and creates some challenges. They did indicate that we have sufficient baseball diamonds, little league fields. Tennis, we do have a need in town to rebuild those tennis courts.
No question about that.
We have a deficiency that we're not, other communities are offering pickleball. We're not offering that. We didn't even enter into the skateboard parks and all of those other items because we're just trying to merely focus on what we have today and how we can improve that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's a big picture issue, which is at some point we need to put a structure around this that allows this to ultimately find its way to requests, having been vetted in a way that this consensus around a need that people actually intend to fund. It's a big picture comment I'll make, and I'm not sure we're going to resolve that issue tonight, but I guess it's time for all of us to start thinking about that. I guess the question for tonight is, is whatever, a $25,000 request in front of us for the designer to continue their work towards.
Yeah, if I may.
Towards a bigger request. But yeah, please, Michael, jump in.
My first thought is we can table this for Monday, if not later, and we should absolutely take up the elevator tonight because of the need. At the very least, I would like to see some sort of report that the $40,000 bought us. And Michelle, it sounds like there is something.
Yep, it's on the website. I'm happy to put it on your OneDrive.
Okay, and in the report, is there a set of next steps that this $25,000 will pay for?
There are several next steps.
That the $25,000 will cover?
Yes.
All right, that will help a lot. So
okay, I will upload that.
My suggestion then would be to table this for Monday and give ourselves, the homework to review the report and look at the next steps and see if the 25K is worth the next steps are worth 25K.
Sounds like a plan.
Susan?
I agree, Michelle. Are you going to put it out there? Because I'm on the Recreation Commission's page on the town website. Is that not where it would be located?
If it's not there, it may be under the town manager's page.
Yeah. No, I agree with what Michael said. I just would like to read it.
I'll upload it so you have it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So we've got 2 documents to read there, and unless there's anything further, we should move on to the elevator.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the elevator. So we got a proposal from Kone a couple of months back to repair the elevator. The cost was $95,000. At that point in time, the Town Hall Building Committee was still moving forward, potentially with a special town meeting ask to push the Town Hall building along. Since then, that's stalled. So we went to advisory for emergency funding for $65,000. And what that was to do was to decommission the elevator. There was a report that there was some spillage of oil in the shaft. So we wanted to mitigate that immediately. Just yesterday, Clean Harbors showed up on site. In the report we got, verbal report we got was there was no spoilage in any other soils other than in the shaft, which was great news for us. And now we'd like to move forward and actually replace the jack and have the elevator operational.
Okay.
So that would be $95,000 to repair, or we could elect to decommission for $65,000.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, it's an additional, it's an additional $30,000 to actually repair.
Yes.
Yeah. And the recommendation is the request is to repair, Michelle, just to be clear?
Yes.
Okay.
And Michelle, if you would, could you articulate some of the rationale that Chris gave to the advisory committee last night?
Sure. So the rationale behind fixing the elevator is, you know, we are in compliance with the ADA because we are offering alternate ways for people to access services on the second floor. However, it's becoming challenging. People are very unhappy that they can't come to the second floor. We've had people push themselves to climb the stairs that necessarily wouldn't have. And it's becoming dangerous. We had a community, a resident of the community come in the other day, visibly upset that she couldn't go upstairs because it wasn't just about going to the tax office and paying her taxes. It's more, you know, going to see people throughout the building because it's a community spot for this individual. And it was upsetting to her that she didn't have that ability. So that's one aspect. The other thing that we don't really talk about, but is also important, is our vendors. So we get 12 bottles of water every other week, and WB Mason is carrying those up all the stairs. That's a safety hazard. We have Shred-it. They come every other week to take all of our Shred-it. They come up and down the stairs. These are uses for the elevator that we don't really think of because we are primarily focused on the residents of the community. But then we have all these vendors, and you certainly don't want something to happen because they're pushing themselves without an elevator.
Michelle, I assume the elevator is a Coney elevator?
Brian, you know, I don't even know the answer to that.
I mean, I guess my question is, you know, are we using Coney because it's a Coney elevator, or are we using Coney because they were the low bidder? you know, on an Otis elevator or whatever else is in there.
Yep, so we're using Kone because the other elevator operator that we had was not great, just to be honest.
Okay. So they gave you a reason to use Kone.
Yes.
Got it. I don't have any further, does anyone else have any further questions or thoughts on this?
Well, I have some thoughts, of course.
Please.
My view, and Brian and I discussed this offline. My view is that this building has been neglected over time, and that although this is a $95,000 repair, it is still necessary, and it's an essential system for the building to operate. Town hall reconstruction is not a done deal. It's certainly not anywhere near realization. And my feeling is even, and this is feeling, we're probably 2 or 3 years away from any kind of new town hall if it is approved. And if it isn't, well, that's a whole other deal. So I feel that it is prudent and worth the money to spend the $95,000. Another point I'll make is in 2018, when I was on advisory, we brought forward a motion to town hall to paint the building. And our rationale was town hall reconstruction is still not a done deal. The building needs the paint job. Let's get a paint job on there. And lo and behold, we got it done. And the building looks the better for it. So it's the same idea. Let's take care of the building that we still have. We have not condemned it. We have not developed any schedule, timetable to reconstruct or rebuild. So those are my thoughts. I think we should go forward.
I'm in the same place. I mean, I'm cognizant that there's a possibility that we repair the elevator and then, you know, promptly renovate the building. But there's also, you know, there's no certainty to that, and it could be quite a bit of time. And I think we need a functioning elevator. I also think that we should wrap our heads around the idea that we should be spending probably a few percent of the value of a building almost every year in maintenance and upgrades, and we don't. And in this context, or in that context, this is just, you know, sort of an annual item that we should be expecting with regards to our various buildings. Especially considering we haven't invested in their maintenance in the past 2 decades. So we're going to see more of this, and this is just a cost of running buildings. It's my instinct. But. Susan, Ralph, thoughts, comments?
Only I support, you know, fixing the elevator and probably fixing the windows. I mean, I do a couple of things here, right? They're just, let's maintain these things until we have some other option, for heaven's sakes.
Until you tear it down. Basically. Yeah. Maintain it until you tear it down.
Exactly. Until you tear it down, for heaven's sakes. These are not huge numbers by what we spent. These are small numbers, really.
Right.
Compared to even doing a field, $100,000 doesn't mean anything. A few windows is nothing.
Right.
We ought to just fix it.
Susan?
No, I agree that time is our enemy here, and we need to take care of the place that we have right now.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I move that capital budget, recommend, give me the exact number, 95. I'm looking it up right now. Is it the revised quote? No, it's the other one. I'm sorry. 94,759.53. 94,759.53.
Give it even 95, Michael.
95,000. Thank you. To repair and bring the town hall elevator back to proper working condition. As soon as possible.
All right, we have a second.
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Susan Franklin,
Aye.
Michael Dick,
Mike Dick, aye.
Ralph Dormitzer,
Dormitzer, aye.
Brian Host, aye.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Apologize that this ran late. We got a lot of stuff done tonight. I think we have some clarity on how to address the others, and got some homework for Monday.
Right. Now, Ralph?
Yep.
Are you good for Monday?
I am good for Monday, yes.
Right. So we have a few things, Michelle, and we're willing to meet Monday. It just puts a lot of pressure on you to try and get all the questions answered.
Yeah, I can send the questions out. It's pressuring the vendor, so I think we'll be okay. I don't think the questions are that difficult that we can't get them answered by Monday. They should know the answers already.
Super. And sounds like some folks will visit Osgood. Some folks will visit the
Beechwood Playground.
Yep.
The playground.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see you all Monday. Unless
Right. I move we adjourn.
All right. So the time is 9:39. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move.
Second?
Second.
All right. Roll call vote. Susan Franklin,
Aye.
Michael Dick,
Mike Dick, aye.
Ralph Dormitzer,
Aye.
Brian Host, aye. Have a great night, all.
Thank you
Good night.
all.
Feel better,
Thanks for
Michael.
your patience.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Hard work.
Michelle, right.
Bye.
Bye, Michelle.
Bye.